Maya didn't think this experiment would find anything. That was actually the whole reason she started it. She had no debt, paid her rent on time, every time, never once bounced a payment. If you'd asked her, before any of this started, whether she had a spending problem, she would have laughed. She considered herself one of the responsible ones. So when she decided to track every single dollar she spent for 30 days, not just the big stuff, literally everything, down to a single dollar coffee, she expected it to confirm what she already believed. 30 boring days of proof that she was fine. By day 30, she wasn't laughing anymore. Day 1 felt almost silly. Maya wrote down her coffee, her lunch, a parking fee. It felt like overkill for someone who already knew, roughly, where her money went. The big things were obvious: rent, her car payment. She'd budgeted for those for years. Groceries. This felt like tracking things that barely counted. That phrase, barely counted, turned out to be exactly the problem, though she wouldn't understand why for another 2 weeks. By day 7, the notebook had a pattern nobody had asked her to look for. A $5 delivery fee here, a skip cooking dinner there, $12 more than the groceries it replaced. A subscription she forgot she still had, charging her every month for an app she'd opened exactly twice. None of these were big. Each one, on its own, was the kind of purchase that doesn't even register as a decision. You just do it. She almost quit the experiment around day 9. It felt tedious and slightly embarrassing, writing down a $2 pack of gum like it mattered. Her rational brain kept insisting the big numbers were the only ones worth her attention. She kept going anyway, mostly out of stubbornness, not because she expected the small numbers to actually matter. By day 15, Maya started noticing something stranger than the purchases themselves. She noticed how she felt about them while she made them. The big purchases: rent, her car payment, she thought about carefully, every time, sometimes for days in advance. The small ones didn't feel like spending at all. Ordering delivery after a long day didn't feel like a financial decision. It felt like self-care. A $5 coffee didn't feel like money leaving her account. It felt like a small, harmless moment that happened to cost something. This is a real, well-documented pattern in behavioral economics. And it has a name: mental accounting, a concept described by the economist Richard Thaler. The idea is that people don't actually treat money as one single pool. Instead, your brain quietly sorts it into separate mental buckets: rent money, grocery money. Just this once money in those buckets don't talk to each other. A purchase that would feel completely unacceptable coming out of the rent bucket feels totally fine coming out of the just this once bucket, even though, at the end of the month, it's the exact same account, the exact same dollars, and the exact same total. Maya's rent bucket was being watched closely, guarded, budgeted to the dollar. Her just this once bucket wasn't being watched by anyone, because in her mind, it didn't fully count as real spending. It was just life. The strange part is that Maya is, by any reasonable measure, good with money. She reads her bank statement. She has a retirement account. She would have passed almost any quiz about basic financial literacy without hesitation. Mental accounting isn't a knowledge problem, which is exactly what makes it so easy to miss. You can understand percentages, compound interest, and budgeting completely, and still have an entire invisible category of spending that your own financial knowledge never gets applied to, simply because it never gets recognized as spending in the first place. By day 22, she started adding it up. Not the big categories, she already knew those numbers cold. The small ones, the delivery fees, the forgotten subscription, the coffees, the I'll just grab this while I'm out purchases that never made it into any plan because they never felt like they needed one. By day 30, the number was $431 in 1 month, on things that, individually, she wouldn't have been able to name a single one of if you'd asked her on day 1. $431 a month is over $5,000 a year spent by someone who genuinely believed, honestly and not naively, that she didn't have a spending problem. And here's the part that actually matters. She was right, in a sense. She didn't have a spending problem in the way she'd always pictured one. No big reckless purchases, no debt spiral, nothing dramatic. She had an invisibility problem. The money wasn't being wasted through bad decisions. It was leaving through purchases so small and so frequent that her brain never filed them as decisions at all. This is why so many people who consider themselves financially responsible are still quietly surprised by how little they've saved. It's not always a discipline problem. Sometimes discipline is aimed entirely at the visible bucket: rent, the car payment, the big line items, while a second, invisible bucket runs completely unmonitored, one small purchase at a time, never once feeling like the same category of decision. It also explains why so much generic advice about cutting back never actually works for people like Maya. Telling someone who's already disciplined about their visible spending to just budget better doesn't address anything, because their budget was never the problem. The problem was a category of spending that never entered the budget in the first place, because it never felt like it belonged there. Maya didn't do anything drastic after day 30. She didn't quit delivery apps or swear off coffee forever. That kind of dramatic reaction rarely lasts anyway, and it wasn't really the point. What she did instead was smaller and stranger, and it's the one habit worth taking from this whole month. She started asking herself a single question every time she reached for just this once purchase: which bucket is this actually coming from? Not to stop herself, just to notice, because the entire mechanism depended on these purchases feeling separate from her real money. The moment she consciously reconnected them, the moment just this once got renamed, even just in her own head, to part of the same account as my rent, the spending didn't disappear, but it dropped by almost half within 2 months. Without a single restrictive budget, without giving up a single thing she genuinely valued. She didn't need a new budgeting app. She didn't need more willpower. She needed her invisible bucket to become visible for 30 days, one written down dollar at a time, until her brain stopped being able to pretend it wasn't the same money. It's worth being specific about why writing it down mattered more than just being more careful. Being more careful is a feeling, and feelings are easy to convince yourself you're having even when nothing's actually changed. Writing it down is a fact, sitting on a page, that doesn't care how careful you meant to be. Maya could tell herself for years that her small purchases didn't add up to much. She couldn't tell herself that once the number was written in her own handwriting, in a column, next to 29 other days that said the exact same thing. If you've ever felt like you're responsible with money and still somehow never seem to have enough of it left over, this might be exactly why. Not a discipline problem. An invisible bucket, quietly running its own separate math, completely unwatched. You don't need 30 days to find yours. You need about 5 minutes and a notebook. Tomorrow, writing down every single purchase, no matter how small, no matter how much it feels like it doesn't count. Especially the ones that feel like they don't count. Those are usually exactly where the bucket is hiding. If this made you want to actually check your own invisible bucket, subscribe, because next week, we're telling the story of the 1% rule wealthy people actually use, and why almost nobody else has ever heard of it. Same honest stories, same simple truth. See you in the next one.